This is the Rob Dibble Show.
Back on the Rob Dibble Show, we're talking about UConn and their success and continued success and where they might end up if they go to a top 5 conference and one of these super fives, as they call them, power fives, as they call them. And we were talking about last hour, right at the end of the hour for a few minutes, just about the ACC and some of the teams that are here. And in all of the sports, they have gotten better and better. And I'll bring up North Carolina, for instance. North Carolina was known as a basketball school for decades, and is now caught up in football and is now nationally known, puts a lot of guys in the NFL. Yeah. And that's somewhere where, listen, when you're looking at University of Miami or you're looking at Clemson and Notre Dame and even Pitt in my youth, Syracuse, these are some of the schools that were always putting a lot of players into the NFL. Now you've got a lot of these schools. Georgia Tech, Louisville. I mean, you're talking about Lamar Jackson in the NFL is one of the top players in the NFL. I mean, this is now one of the best conferences in football, and I think if UConn was in this, they might struggle, but I think it has to come down to recruiting. And I bring it back to the NIL. I said this before NIL even came out, that local businesses, and we have plenty, that especially being the insurance capital of the world, have to get into the NIL if they want to keep competitive with these other colleges around the country, because that's what local businesses are doing. They're picking up on these kids. They're putting advertising dollars in their pockets, and these kids are choosing these schools based on what they can make off the field.
Yeah, in this conversation, every single time, I always have to remind people, whenever you ask why are we doing this? Why should this be done? Why do we have these things? Why don't we have these things? In college sports, there's only one answer, and that is money. The reason it's such a good idea, or almost a necessity, is because of the financial situation of what is or what could be. When you look at universities in the SEC that are getting written a football rights check for TV rights of $250 million for a football season. I mean, we're worried about a $50 million deficit from the athletic department now. That is chump change to these Power 5 universities. That is, price of doing business is $50 million for them. And if you want to try to compete in that world and do it on a budget, UConn has done, I think, the maximum that it can possibly do. It's hard to even get better than national championship men's and women's basketball, a bowl team, a competitive football team, and what they've done in hockey and baseball. It's really tough. But like your comment about that conference in particular, the ACC getting better at football, you know why? Money. They made a concerted effort 15 to 20 years ago, knowing that the ACC has to compete in football because television rights were paying SEC, Big 12, Big 10, huge dollars. Really start with the Big 10, the Big 10 network. Huge dollars for their rights of their conference games. The ACC knew that their basketball could compete, but the basketball television right dollars are not even getting compared to the football dollars in television rights.
Let me give you a few. This is from last year. Alabama has not released theirs, but this is Ohio State, Texas, Michigan. Ohio State, just the football. This is the football, and what they gave back to the athletic department was $251 million. $251 million. Texas, $240 million. Texas football, $240 million. Just the football. This is like, all your shoe contracts, all that stuff together. Michigan, 210. LSU, 200. It's 199.31. I'll say $200 million back to the athletic department.
And believe it or not, people can admit this or they won't admit this, but I'll tell you right now, the reason that we're independent in football, the reason we got Coach Mora, yes, we want to win football guys and not, leaving the second half, leaving the third, nothing. Of course. But the bigger reason to be competitive in football is to get on one of these boats. Yeah. So you get those kind of deals, like plus $1 million. $200 million check dropped in their laps today. Do you know how much worry would be off of everyone's shoulders in this state. Everyone's shoulders in this state. Now, you brought up competing in this league, in the football sense. In a world where Clemson and Florida State's there as well. Let's just, imagine things are the way they are. Syracuse, I think you can compete with. I know they kicked our butts last year, but we're upset about that. We're going to get them back. Boston College, we beat. So those are your northern teams right there. Pittsburgh is nothing like they used to be.
No. They're beatable.
Definitely beatable. Maryland, I'll throw them in the bunch right now. They're having problems right now. DJ Uiagalelei went to Oregon State, transferred out of there. I think they're beatable this year. I think the northern half of that conference is beatable. Now you throw in your Georgia Techs, throw in your North Carolina, throw in your Dukes. Duke, NC State, we'll see them this year. By the way, you guys notice a lot of these ACC teams on these football schedules that are already out? By design.
Yeah.
By design. But I don't know what dominoes are going to fall to open doors.
August 31st, we have North Carolina State.
Yep. And I think Duke's like week 3, maybe, week 4, something like that, right around there.
Let me see Duke's schedule.
And those are winnable games. And this team, they're going to be better than what they were last year at 6-7 with the bowl game. UConn football, that is. I think, they're not winning. If they're dropped into the conference this year, they're not winning the ACC. 2-3 years, I don't know. That could happen. That definitely could happen. Like you said, recruiting to a football player where you're going to play in a conference that is going to be on national television is a huge bargaining chip when you're in a living room. I think what Coach Mora has done in his first 2 years of recruiting has been pretty great with having to dispel the conversation of we're an independent football team and our games are kind of splashed over all over the place.
September 23rd, Duke will be here at 3:30.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Be in Connecticut to play
winning that
UConn.
game. I think it's a monster basketball conference. Like, I understand,
Absolutely.
The Big East has been a lot of fun. It's gritty and grimy, and the officiating's totally different in the Big East compared to any other conference, and I love it. I think it's great. It's tough. Man, won't it be great to play Syracuse twice a year? It wouldn't be great to have a rivalry with
Carolina
Boston
Duke?
We're still going to play Providence. We're still going to play Rhodey. We got, 15, 20
Got a lot of
conference
games.
But, man, going down to the Triangle, Duke, UConn conference game down there in Durham. That gives me goosebumps to think about.
Miami used to be in the Big East. Miami was in the Big East. We played them in hoops years ago. So a lot of these teams we'd be seeing
Virginia
again.
Tech.
Syracuse we'd see again. Pittsburgh we'd see again. Boston College we'd see again. So those would be renewed rivalries again.
You mentioned the women's basketball team. Dude, that's
some competition.
Night and day. Yeah. Night and day when it comes to competition. Duke women's basketball is awesome, and they're getting even better. I was telling you guys about that Canadian Toby Fournier, who's a dunker that's going there next year. And they get great recruits all over the place in women's basketball. And I think that sport is going to just take off like a rocket in the next 5 years with, no money in the WNBA compared to like these girls are making in college sports. So, and imagine that, imagine those games. How much more money for the players individually is going to go up in NIL when you're beating North Carolina, Duke, NC State in the Triangle instead of beating Creighton, and your toughest competition is one girl from Villanova. Like there's a reason a lot of these other girls, the girl that just left, was it DePaul, or their best player, she's going to the SEC. It's a stepping stone conference except for UConn. It's a stepping stone conference except for UConn. And
I think in being around and growing up here, you can't be afraid of this stuff either. I think a lot of people are fearful. What will that? It's not what it's going to look like. It's what it's going to do financially for the university. It helps your academics. It helps your campus. It grows everything. So if they were bringing in, let's just say it's half of 200. Let's just say it's $100 million check every year. It's helping every other sports that during COVID were lost. Things, programs that were lost, different. My wife being an alum can talk about all the different academia things that were lost during COVID. That's what you're talking about, trying to regrow a lot of this stuff. But the only way to do that is not just basketball; it's football. Yeah. And it took Penders 20 years to get a new stadium for baseball. You'd be able to buy some of this stuff in coming years because you'd have the financial wherewithal to do this stuff. So you can't be like, I don't want to leave the Big East now that it's good. It's not about that. It's about the future and grow. You don't want to be left out. If a lot of teams leave the Big East or a lot of teams leave these other conferences and those conferences go by the wayside, UConn won't have anybody to play.
Right.
And they'll be left out. They won't get any money. You're not going to make a lot of money in TV deals if you're not a part of one of these super conferences.
You're going to be there with Rhode Island. You're going to be there with UMass. You're going to be there with the have-not group instead of the Power 5 haves. I'm glad you brought up Coach Penders because the baseball conversation is the one that I got into a lot with people all across the country on Monday. That was the selection day for the NCAA tournament. UConn, Boston College, Northeastern, Northeast teams that did not get any kind of love when it came to seeding, and no one got a host, and the RPI is atrocious. Northeastern plays in a tough CAA. Boston College plays in a tough ACC. UConn plays in a weak Big East. And all these teams got to share midweek games to try to boost that RPI. When Boston College played us, they dropped an RPI. Because they're playing a lesser-than team. Being in a conference like the ACC, if UConn was just plopped into that conference, I think the ACC got 5 teams in the NCAA region. Like, they're automatically boosted RPI. They win that they are hosting. They win the ACC. They are hosting a conference or an NCAA regional in Stores this weekend. They win the Big East. I don't know. We'll see what the NCAA says.
That's right.
And so, the clout that you get in so many different levels, especially in seeding and NCAA's placement when it comes to baseball. You baseball fans of the Hook C, it's an easier road for these have teams.
Let's just talk women's basketball, man. Women's basketball would be, if they dominated these schools, they would be ready for anybody in the NCAA tournament. It'd be better than the 11 national titles. They would be playing these schools all the time. It sucks that Notre Dame's not as strong as they used to be when Muffet McGraw was there.
They're getting there.
But these Virginias, the Virginia Techs, the Georgia Techs, these teams have gotten better and better and better. So it's not just a game on the schedule to play. It's not just like a scrimmage for UConn women to play. Gina would definitely, and a lot of these kids that pick these schools would now be like, well, I could go to UConn and I'd still be in the ACC, and we're going to play all these other teams. That's how you sell these kids on your school. Is not who you are, but who you're going to play against. That if people don't understand that, then you don't understand how the recruiting works. The recruiting is you're going to walk in there and go, hey, by the way, we're in the ACC now, and you're going to play against blah, blah, blah. And so you're able to walk in a Florida house or walk in a North Carolina, South Carolina house or a Virginia house and go like, listen, you're not going to start on Virginia next year, but you're going to start for us next year.
Right.
That's how you sell kids on going to your school.
Well, the other conference of question, Don brought it up, Commissioner was in town checking it out, Big 12. Now, I think we can make a lot of the same arguments that we just did with the ACC with the Big 12, minus Syracuse, minus Boston College. You will get West Virginia, a team that you're bringing up all those old Big East teams. That used to be a thing. That's a really good basketball game. That's a awesome men's basketball conference. Women's basketball as well. Awesome. But the travel.
It'd be insane.
The travel.
Cost prohibitive.
I don't know if you're going to have to make a big football TV deal, big men's basketball TV deal just to support your travel.
Kansas, Texas, Kansas State, Baylor, Iowa State, Texas Christian, Oklahoma State, West Virginia is your closest one. Texas Tech, Oklahoma. You're talking about hours on planes for these kids.
I'm just not getting juiced up for that at the XL Center.
Absolutely not.
I'm not getting really crazy. I think it would be a fun football brand because that brand of football scores a lot of points and it's fun to watch. But the rivalry, I want to beat this team, it's not there for me with these Big 12 teams like it is for the ACC or even the Big East.
I'm thinking basketball, even baseball. I'm thinking the ACC's better for all of the sports.
Yeah. It is. And there might be some dominoes that have to fall for it to open up. Like we were saying, Florida State, Clemson's been in a conversation to move to the SEC for about 4 years now. And then I think two other teams, like if the ACC got a team in their conference that is what I would deem a lesser than school, like I think East Carolina is a lesser than school by far for UConn.
Right.
If they got ACC, I would feel like, what? I don't know. I think it's a perfect fit. I really do think it's perfect timing because we need it, and it's a perfect fit because ACC needs it.
Got to grow. You got to evolve if you want to survive. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do the daily pick. We'll talk some MLB injuries. Could that stymie the Yankees moving forward? We'll discuss next on the Rob Dibble Show with Ben Darnell on your afternoon drive.